So you show you possess Chokhmah when you put it to work and develop the skill of making a good life.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's do this. Let's go find some wisdom.
But before you do, Proverbs has one more really important thing to consider. Chokhmah isn't some impersonal force. It's an attribute of God himself. And so in Hebrew thought, your journey to becoming wise has to begin with what Proverbs calls the fear of the Lord. It's this healthy respect for God's definition of good and evil. And true wisdom means learning those boundary lines and not crossing them.
Now, all those ideas you just unpacked are in chapters 1 through 9 in Proverbs. But when I think of the book of Proverbs, I think of the collection of sayings, the Proverbs themselves. Tell me about those.
Yeah, those are what you find in chapters 10 on to the end of the book. It's a collection of hundreds and hundreds of proverbs about any and all aspects of life. And Chokhmah gets applied to them, resulting in this wise guidance to help you find a path towards success, and no matter what you do.
If I design my life with these sayings, life is going to be good.
Yeah, or as Proverbs puts it, it'll give health to your bones, prosperity, a long, rich life.
Which is a really big claim.
But you can see how it's often the case. Wise people, they tend to do better. Things usually work out well for them in life. And so that is the promise and the wisdom of the book of Proverbs.
It's so good that you're here in church today, isn't it? It's actually very wise of you to be here in church today. Because as we come together and continually remind each other what is wisdom, what is truth, as we sharpen each other and encourage each other, that truth sinks down deeper into us and becomes real wisdom in our lives. Really being part of a church, not just coming occasionally, but committing to be part of a family is one of the very best things you can do for the course of your whole life, because it will allow God to do his work in you. We're jumping into a new series of messages starting today and throughout the summer, and it's going to be called Wisdom for Living. We're going to be looking at the book of Proverbs. We've just finished a series called Discovering Prayer, and we've seen many answers to prayer. We've been encouraging each other to keep on asking and seeking and knocking, pushing until God comes through and answers the prayers that we're asking him for, or else gives us a better answer than we started out with. We're going to keep doing that throughout the summer. We're going to invite a lot of people this summer. And that's part of why we're doing this series. This series, Wisdom for Living, is going to be a chance to invite people. Maybe they haven't come to church ever. Maybe they haven't come in a long time. This would be a great chance for them to come and learn something very specific. So if you look on your bulletin, everybody should have one of these, you'll see that there's no sermon title in the spot where there usually is a sermon title. Instead, there's actually an outline of the entire series right there. So those are the different topics that we're going to be covering from the book of Proverbs. Wisdom from the Bible to deal with specific situations, specific areas of life. You see, the one for today is an introductory message. I'll show you what the title of the message today will be, The Foundation of the World, and you'll see why in a minute. But so each week when you come, whichever one's highlighted, that's the one for that week. And they are in order. So you can know, oh, next week it's going to be this one. And you need to be thinking about, who in my life should I be inviting to come and hear that? There are people all around us. You're going to think of people as you look at these people. Next week will be friends and neighbors. You know people who are isolated, who desperately need close friends, and neighbors who are really neighbors, but they don't know it. They don't believe it. When those people come to your mind, that's who you should pray for. and that's who you should invite to come. So I'd ask you to do that this summer. Let's work together to help people grow in their relationship with God and with other people. It's going to be an exciting series because it will be very specific. Even today, we'll have a couple of very specific points. The video that we looked at just talked about what is wisdom. The book of Proverbs is all about wisdom. It starts out in the first 9 chapters of the book talking about what is wisdom, how would we get it, and why would we want it. And that's some of what we'll be talking about today. And then after those first 9 chapters, it goes into many, many specific things, different areas of life, and what does wisdom look like in this area. The book of Proverbs, as many of you know and have experienced, is an incredible gift from God. It's a guidebook for life. It's amazing. He even set it up, God arranged things, so that the book would happen in 31 chapters, right? He did that so that you can just easily read through it in a month. You pick 1 chapter a day, and many of you have done this, and you read through the book. Proverbs is not a book you should just read once and be done. But it's a book we need to return to again and again so that the ideas, what wisdom looks like in different situations in our lives, sink down deep. Oh, it's so good that we're here today to look at this. All right, we're going to start out talking about what is wisdom. And wisdom is the foundation of the world. That's what the book of Proverbs says, and that's what we saw in that video. So we're going to start out with a verse from chapter 3, looking at Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 19. And here's what it says. By wisdom, the Lord laid the earth's foundations. By understanding, he set the heavens in place. Wisdom is the foundation of the world. Or maybe better said even, wisdom is the foundation of the universe. So there's a God who made everything. And the way that he is, his character, who he is, has been embedded into every area of existence. Every area of life, every area of the physical world. It's just like if you made something, you would put some of yourself into it. It would be made in a particular way because it was made by you. The same way with God. He made the universe, he made us. And so his mark, his stamp, his character is present in everything that he made. Wisdom is the foundation of the world. And because of that, and here's the first point for your notes you can write in, because of that, life has principles. And if you follow them, things go good. Now I know that's grammatically incorrect. Some of you are thinking it should be things go well, right? Yeah, but I'm trying to emphasize a point for you here, and you'll remember it better if I make a grammatical error. Things will go good if you follow the principles that life is built on. It doesn't mean everything will be perfect, but things will go good much more often. Let's use an illustration to think about this. When I was in high school, I did a lot of running. Some of you were here last week. Actually, all of you were here last week, and you saw my amazing running video. If you didn't see it, go watch it. It was fantastic. In high school, I did a lot of running. I was on the cross-country team and the track team, only long distance. I ran the 1,600 meter once in 4 minutes and 10 seconds. It was really fast. I puked afterwards. Sad story. We did, one of my favorite things that we did in cross-country training at the end of the summer is we would go to a river that was in my hometown. It was shallow in a lot of places, and almost anywhere you could get through it with no more than, a couple of feet of water. And we would run down the river. So the coach would drop us off. He would tell us wear old shoes. He would drop us off upstream, and we would run downstream toward our destination and then run back to the school. It was amazingly fun. A beautiful sunshine. We're splashing each other. It was hard work. You're training your muscles. Now, those of us who were older and had done it a few times, and you know when you're a teenager, you think you can do anything. You think you have no limits, right? And so I would run. Me and a couple of my friends would be way ahead of everyone. And then I think, oh, I'm going to go back upstream. And I'm going to catch some of those people who are way behind and run with them for a little while. But turning around and running up the river is a whole different thing than running downstream. I started out and I thought, oh yeah, I can do this. I'm tough. I can do anything. I was destroyed by the time I got back to those slower people who then defeated me on the way back to the school as I drag myself barely alive to the end of the run. It's a whole different thing to run downstream than it is to run upstream. And that's the illustration. If we're following the principles that God has built into life and built into the world, it's like running downstream. It's like going with the flow that life was designed for. But if we're violating the principles that God has built into the world, life is going to be really hard. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. It's simple. You're running upstream. You're going against the flow. Things are going to be very difficult. Now, going downstream doesn't mean that everything will be perfect. There are still rapids on the way downstream. There are still obstacles. There are still forks in the river where you have to decide which way to go. But overall, your life is going with the flow, and your life will be much, much easier and more productive than it would be if you're going against the principles that God has built into the world. So that was our first point there. There are principles. Life has principles. And if you follow them, things are going to go good. As we begin to look at the book of Proverbs, the very first principle that is stated over and over and over again in those first 9 chapters, almost as if it were the most important principle, or the thing that you have to start out with. And if you don't start with this, the rest won't even matter, and it won't, because you won't get there. The first principle that Proverbs is screaming at us is that you have to get wisdom. Wisdom isn't going to be very useful to you if you don't have it. Right? In order for wisdom to be useful to you, it actually has to become part of who you are. And this is not just something that Proverbs is advising us to do. This is a really smart thing to get some wisdom, to learn what life is all about. It's actually presenting this as a principle of the universe, a principle of reality. In order to do well, you must constantly be growing. What's our mission here at Community of Hope Church? To help people grow in their relationship with God and with each other. I'm feeling energetic, and there's tons of you here, and I want to hear your loud, booming voice. Let's do it together. Help people grow. Louder. Help people grow. Excellent. Almost like an Anglican church now. That's fantastic. All right. So Proverbs 4:7. Let's go there for a minute. Proverbs 4:7 says this: the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it costs you all you have, get understanding. So wisdom here is described as the very greatest treasure. I thought about this a lot when I was a young adult, and there were many different pressures on me. I was not yet a follower of Jesus. I didn't know what life was really about, and I knew that I didn't know. And people were telling me all kinds of different things. Work on your career, that's the most important thing. Hang out with your friends, that's the most important thing. Find a really pretty girlfriend, that's the most important thing. And I kept thinking to myself, if I don't know what this life that I'm living is really about, if I don't know the rules, if I don't know what the end goal is, how can I possibly know what the best choice to make, what the next step in my life is? If I don't know where I'm supposed to be going, then I can't just choose a direction. I could end up in completely the wrong place. And so this principle is built into life. It's built into reality. Get wisdom. It's more important than anything else that you have, because if you don't have it, you'll be going the wrong direction. You'll be efficient and productive in all the wrong ways. It's more valuable than anything else. Next, let's move a little bit further in chapter 4, and we'll read Proverbs 4, verse 23. This is a related point. You'll see how it's connected in just a minute. Proverbs 4:23 says this: above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And here we can answer the question more fully: what exactly is wisdom? Here's the second point for your notes this morning. Wisdom is when truth becomes part of your heart, not just your head. Do you see it? Wisdom is when truth becomes part of your heart, not just part of your head. There are many things in life that we know, but we don't do. There are many times you have someone suggest you read a book. This book could really help you in a certain area or situation of your life. You take the time to read the first couple of pages of the book. Maybe if you're a really good student, the first few chapters, or even you read the whole book. And then you close it and you say, I'm done. I got that. But really, you know from your experience, you're not doing hardly any of the things in the book. Maybe the book there have been places in the book where you read and you thought, yes, that is wisdom. That would help me so much in my life. And you do it for a week. But then it's not built into you deeply enough. So when, for example, we have a class, and the class has been offered before. We have classes here in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring before church, so that we can grow deeper in wisdom in our understanding. Sometimes I hear people say things like, oh, well, I've already done that class. That's not wisdom. Sometimes I offer a book or suggestion to someone for somewhere to read in the Bible even, and they say, oh, well, I already know that. I've already read that. That's not wisdom. Here's wisdom. Someone comes to me and suggests a book or a part of the Bible that I've read 100 times, but I'm not living it. And they say, this is what you need. And I say, yes. Yes. I need it again, because it hasn't yet sunk down to the place where it's in my heart, where it's changed who I am, the way I feel, and the way I naturally act. Guard your heart above all else. And in order to guard it, I have to be constantly seeking to grow in wisdom. The third section of this second point here is related. And this comes to the area or the subject of teachability. In order to gain wisdom, in order to keep on growing and becoming better, letting truth sink down to who we are, we have to be people who are able to learn. Now that might sound like a silly thing. Isn't everyone able to learn? But you know from your experience in life that it's not true. There are people around you who have decided very firmly that they know everything there is to know in a certain subject area or category of their life. Or even that they believe, they wouldn't say this maybe, but they act like they believe that they know everything there is to know about life, and they don't need to learn anything else. Those people, when you approach them and try to gently, lovingly correct them when they're going the wrong way, they defend themselves. They justify their behavior, and they fight. They immediately get defensive. Let's look at an example from the book of Proverbs. And here we'll turn to chapter 9, which you remember from the video. It's the first 9 chapters that are sort of setting up what are the principles, the foundational principles around wisdom. In chapter 9, let me read you verses 7 to 9. And here we're going to encounter a couple of words that Proverbs uses again and again. Whoever corrects a mocker invites insults. Whoever rebukes the wicked incurs abuse. Do not rebuke mockers, or they will hate you. Rebuke the wise, and they will love you. Instruct the wise, and they will be wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. Socrates, the famous Greek philosopher, once said that the beginning of all knowledge is to know that you know nothing. Now, he didn't really mean that he knew nothing, but it's an attitude with which we approach life, other people, and God. What is the attitude that you are approaching life, other people, and God with? When someone comes to you and says, this thing that you did, that's not the right way. It's this other way. Things are going to go way better if you do it this way. Whether they're right or wrong, what's your reaction? Don't answer the question. That's the test. Whether they are right or wrong, maybe they are completely off base. Maybe they're just saying this because they really are against you or don't like you. But when someone comes to you and corrects you, what is your immediate response? Is your immediate response to justify yourself, to defend yourself? Or is your immediate response to think carefully about what they've said? To treat it as an opportunity given by God for you to grow? That's the difference between the wise person that the book of Proverbs describes and what Proverbs describes as a fool. Someone who cannot grow. In order to grow and gain wisdom, we must approach life, other people, and God with this same attitude. It's actually an attitude of humility is what it is. It's an attitude that says, God's brought me a long way by His grace, but I know that there is a lot I don't know. I know that I need to learn, and I'm looking for that knowledge to learn from every source that's around me. I can learn something from every single person in this room. Every one of you is ahead of me in some area of life. That's the truth. And that's true for you too. You can learn something from every single person in your life. Even if that person isn't following God, God can speak to you through them. And you can certainly learn from God, and we all have a long way to go. The beginning of wisdom is to get wisdom. We'll look at just one more point this morning. As Proverbs is setting things up for us in the beginning, this book of Proverbs. What is wisdom? How can we get it? Why would we want it? We've seen wisdom is the foundation of the world. We've seen that we need to get wisdom. That's a principle built into the universe. And now, we're going to see a principle about good and evil. And this principle is interesting. I'm going to tell you a story about my uncle. Uncle Gene, I hope you're watching this. So my Uncle Gene is a ton of fun. Actually, both of my uncles are really, really fun. My Uncle Gene is so much fun. He's always the loudest person in a room. One of his favorite things to do, he's kind of mischievous. He's a little bit like maybe Jacob in the Bible. You know people like this. At some points in his life, he's been the black sheep in our family because of this. But he is a follower of Jesus, a strong follower of Jesus, and I really appreciate him. One of the things he likes to do is, and this has nothing to do with the message, it's just funny. He likes to stand in an elevator, and if there's people who are really, he perceives them to be kind of stuck up or whatever else, he likes to wait until the elevator doors are about to open, and then he lets out a fart, and then he walks out of the elevator and lets it close behind him. I'm trying to give you guys a vibe of who this person is before we go into the story. You can laugh about those kinds of things. It's okay in church. Everybody farts. All right. Now, my Uncle Gene, one time we go camping. So it's my dad, my Uncle Gene, my cousins. It's my son Carter was with us. And Carter was, I don't know, how old were you, Carter? Maybe you were 2. I think you were 2 or 3. And we're way out in the middle of nowhere, and what my family, this is in the United States, and my family really likes to play with guns. It's a weird American thing more than it is a Canadian thing. But my Uncle Gene is not very careful with his gun, and it was very scary. He would shoot, and he would miss everything that he was aiming at. And he would pretend he's a cowboy with his revolver, right? And we're all okay. And he had this holster, and the whole camping trip, he would just keep his gun in the holster. And at one point, we kept flinching from him, the way he would move around with this thing. And we kept saying, Gene, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, man. He's twirling his gun, and then he's trying to put it into his holster like Billy the Kid. And then it happened. He twirls that gun, he puts it into his holster and fires it off while it's in the holster. Praise God, it did not hit any person, even himself, but he shot the ground literally 2 inches from his foot. At which point we told him, Gene, you are no longer allowed to carry a firearm in our camp. Okay, the point of that story is just this. The point of that story is this. Shooting yourself in the foot is not smart. And the point that Proverbs makes is this. Evil is not smart. This is the second big principle in those first 9 chapters of Proverbs. Doing things that are wrong is stupid. It's not just, oh, we're advising you not to do this. It's actually unintelligent. There will come a day in human history, a day in the future, after God has come and restored the world, when the knowledge of God will cover all human beings. The whole earth will be full of the knowledge of God's glory. And in those days, everyone, it will be as obvious to us as it is that it's stupid to shoot yourself in the foot. It will be as obvious as that things like deceiving other people are idiotic. They're stupid. Things like cheating, that's like shooting yourself in the foot. It will be that obvious in those days, but it is not obvious today, and Proverbs is screaming this out to us. Evil is really, really dumb. That's the third point for your notes if you didn't already get it. Evil is not smart. And we're going to take a look at Proverbs chapter 1 and read this from the book itself. Let's start with verse 10. Solomon, who's writing the book of Proverbs, sets it up by imagining a scenario where someone is trying to convince you to do something that's wrong. In this scenario, he uses the illustration of, someone's trying to convince you to go rob someone or murder them. That doesn't happen much here today, sometimes, but thankfully it doesn't happen much in British Columbia in 2019, where someone is trying to convince you to go murder someone. But just imagine another kind of situation that does happen in your life. Someone's trying to convince you to do something wrong. My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, come with us, let's lie in wait for innocent blood, let's ambush some harmless soul. We'll jump down to verse 17 here. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. So doing something foolish, something that can never succeed. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain. That means you gain something that you wanted, money, reputation, status. You gain something that you wanted by using a means that's wrong to get it. You did something wrong to get it. You deceived someone, you cut a corner, you did something that went against your own conscience and against God's principles to get it. When that happens, the end of verse 19 says this: it takes away the life of those who get it. Jesus said it like this: what good is it if I actually gained everything in the entire world, but I lost my soul? It's useless. It's foolish is the word that we usually translate the word from Hebrew in the book of Proverbs. It's foolish. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's unintelligent. Evil does not make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Sometimes little kids, I have a son who struggles with this, think that all the evil characters in their cartoons and video games and movies, all the evil characters are the really cool ones. Did you ever feel like that when you were a kid? Maybe, maybe not. The ones that are evil look the best. They're the most powerful. Now, I know as we grow older, we no longer think that the evil characters, most of us don't think that unless we're stuck in an unending childhood. Don't think that the evil characters, superhero villains, are the coolest ones. We start to recognize that they actually lose in the end every time. But what happens is something similar in our lives as adults, that we are often deceived into thinking that taking the shortcut, doing something that's just a little bit wrong, living my life for myself on my own terms instead of following God's way, is the way to succeed. It's the same kind of deception. The wrong thing, the evil thing, actually is the good way, the cool way. But it's not. One day that will be seen clearly. But the book of Proverbs is screaming this wisdom at us. It's not good. It's foolish. To close the message today, I just want to ask this question. We've talked about wisdom. We talked about